Well, good evening, everybody. Welcome. My name is Mike Froman. I'm president of the council, and it's a great pleasure to have you here tonight for one of our CFR CEO speaker series, and to have the CEO and co-founder of Anthropic, Dario Amodei, with us tonight. Dario was vice president of research at OpenAI, where he helped develop GPT-2 and 3. And before joining OpenAI, he worked at Google Brain as a senior research scientist. I'm going to talk with Dario for about 30 minutes. Then we'll open it up to questions from people here in the hall. We have about 150 people here. We have about 350 online. And so we'll try and get some of their questions in as well. Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
So you left OpenAI to start Anthropic, a mission-first public benefit corporation. Why leave? What are Anthropic's core values? And how do they manifest themselves in your work? And let me just say, a cynic would say, well, this mission first, this is all marketing. You know, how can you give us some specific examples of how your product and strategy reflect your mission?
So yeah, if I were to just back up and kind of set the context, we left at the end of 2020. I think in 2019 and 2020, something was happening which I think myself and a group within OpenAI, which eventually became my co-founders at Anthropic, were I think among the first to recognize. They're called kind of scaling laws, or the scaling hypothesis today. And the basic hypothesis is simple. It says that, and it's really remarkable thing, and I can't overemphasize how unlikely it seemed at the time. If you take more computation and more data to train AI systems with relatively simple algorithms, they get better at all kinds of cognitive tasks across the board. And we were measuring these trends back when models cost $1,000 or $10,000 to train. So that's a kind of an academic grant budget level. And we forecast that these trends would continue even when models cost $100 million, $1 billion, $10 billion to train, which now we're getting to. And indeed, that if the quality of the models and their level of intelligence continued, they would have huge implications for the economy. It was even the first time we realized that they would likely have very serious national security implications. We generally felt that the leadership at OpenAI was on board with this general scaling hypothesis, although many people inside and outside were not. But the second realization we had was that if the technology was going to have this level of significance, we really needed to do a good job of building it. We really needed to get it right. In particular, on one hand, these models are very unpredictable. They're inherently statistical systems. One thing I often say is we grow them more than we build them. They're like a child's brain developing, so controlling them, making them reliable is very difficult. The process of training them is not straightforward. So just from a system safety perspective, making these things predictable and safe is very important. And then, of course, there's the use of them by people, the use of them by nation states, the effect that they have when companies deploy them. And so we really felt like we needed to build this technology in absolutely the right way. OpenAI, a bit as you've alluded to, was founded with some claims about that they would do exactly this. But for a number of reasons, which I won't get into in detail, we didn't feel that the leadership there was taking these things seriously, and so we decided to go off and do this on our own. And the last 4 years have actually been a kind of, almost a side-by-side experiment of, what happens when you try and do things one way and what happens when you try and do things the other way, and how it has played out. So I'll give a few examples of how, we've really, I think, displayed a commitment to these ideas. One is we invested very early in the science of what is called mechanistic interpretability, which is looking inside the AI models and trying to understand exactly why they do what they do. One of our 7 co-founders, Chris Olah, is the founder of the field of mechanistic interpretability. This had no commercial value, or at least no commercial value for the first 4 years that we worked on it. It's just starting to be a little bit in the distance, but nevertheless we had a team working on this the whole time in the presence of fierce commercial competition, because we believe that understanding what is going on inside these models is a public good that benefits everyone, and we published all of our work on it so others could benefit from it as well. I think another example is we came up with this idea of constitutional AI, which is training AI systems to follow a set of principles. Instead of training them from data or from mass data or human feedback, this allows you to get up, say, in front of Congress and say these are the principles according to which we trained our model. When we first came to when we had our first product, our first version of Claude, which is our model, we actually delayed the release of that model roughly 6 months because this was such a new technology that we weren't sure of the safety properties. We weren't sure we wanted to be the ones to kind of kick off a race. This was just before ChatGPT. So we arguably had the opportunity to seize the ChatGPT moment. We chose to release a little later, which I think had real commercial consequences, but set the culture of the company. A final example I would give is we were the first to have something called a responsible scaling policy. What this does is it measures categories of risk of models as they scale, and we have to take increasingly strict security and deployment measures as we meet these points. And so we were the first one to release this, the first one to commit to it, and then within a few months of when we did, the other companies all followed suit. And so we were able to set an example for the ecosystem. When I look at what the other companies have done, we've often led the way on these issues and often caused the other companies to follow us. Not always. Sometimes they do something great and we follow them. But I think there's been a good history of us sticking to our commitments, and I would contrast that with what we've seen from some of the other companies in their behavior. We now have several years of history, and so far, fingers crossed, I think our commitments have held up pretty well.
I want to talk about both the risks and the opportunities that you've cited around AI. But since you mentioned the responsible scaling issue, let's go back to that. We're at level 2 now.
Yeah. So
and at what level is it existential? How will we know when we hit level 3? And if you hit level 3, can you go backwards, or does it only get worse?
Yeah. So the way our responsible scaling policy is set up is we basically said, and the analogy was to biosafety levels. So, the biosafety level system is like, these are how dangerous various pathogens are. And so we said, let's have AI safety levels. And so AI safety level 2 is the level we're currently at. And that's, systems that are powerful, but the risks they pose are comparable to the risks that, other kinds of technology pose. ASL 3, which actually I think our models are starting to approach. The last model we released, we said this model isn't ASL 3 yet, but it's getting there. ASL 3 is characterized, and we focus very much on the national security side, very kind of serious risks that are out of proportion to the risks that normal technologies have. So an ASL 3 model is designed as one that could allow you in the areas of, say, chemical, biological, or radiological weapons, could allow an unskilled person, simply by talking to the model and following its instructions, to do things that you would have to have, say, a PhD in virology to do today. So once that is possible, if those risks aren't mitigated, then that would enhance the number of people in the world who are able to do these highly destructive things, from, say, in the 10,000s today to in the tens of millions once the models are available. And so when the models are capable of this, we have to put in mitigation so that the models are not willing to actually, provide this information, and security restrictions so that, the models won't be stolen. And I think we're approaching that. We may actually hit that this year. And we believe we have a story for how to deploy those kinds of models safely by, removing their ability to do this very narrow range of dangerous tasks without compromising their commercial viability.
So this is a fairly narrow set of tasks. As you say, you're just going to prevent the model from answering those questions.
prevent the model from engaging in those kinds of tests, which is, it's not straightforward, right? You can say, I'm taking a virology class at Stanford University. I'm working on my coursework. Like, can you tell me how to make this particular plasmid? And so the model has to be smart enough to not fall for that and say, hey, actually, that isn't the kind of thing you would
sound
ask.
like a bioterrorist. I won't answer your question.
You sound like you have bad intent.
Yeah. But it's sort of limited to your own imagination, or our own imagination, as to what all the back acting could be. There are a lot of things that we may not anticipate beyond those four categories.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is an issue that just as every time we release a new model, there are positive applications for it that people find that we weren't expecting. I expect there will also be negative applications. We always monitor the models for different use cases in order to discover this, so that we have a continuous process where we don't get taken by surprise. If we're worried that someone will do something evil with Model 6, hopefully some early signs of that can be seen in Model 5 when we monitor it. But this is the fundamental problem of the models. You don't really know what they're capable of. You don't truly know what they're capable of until they're deployed to 1 million people. You can test ahead of time. You can have your researchers bash against them. You can have, even the government. We collaborate with the government AISIs, test them. But the hard truth is that there's no way to be sure. They're not like code where you can do formal verification. What they can do is unpredictable. It's just like, if I think of you or me instead of the model, if I'm like the quality assurance engineer for me or you, can I give a guarantee that there's a particular kind of bad behavior you are logically not capable of, will never happen? People don't work that way.